So I guess, yeah, how did ECWolf get started then? How did that all come about?
Yeah, so ECWolf was literally started because Wolfenstein 3D did not have volume controls, and I wanted to turn
Oh.
down. I wanted to independently control the sound effect volume from the music volume, and one thing led to another, and eventually I was maintaining a whole source point. So yeah, ECWolf forked from Wolf4SDL,
Mhm.
and if that project didn't exist, I don't think ECWolf would have, even though these days I know enough assembly that I probably could have worked through it. Yeah, the history of Wolfenstein 3D source ports is a bit more of a mess.
Mm.
So I think the source code was released around the same time the Doom source code was released. Um, but I don't know off the
Source
top of my head
code
when.
release
Uh,
date. Let's see if we can find out. July. Wait. July 21st, 1995. No, this initial. Wait.
that's possible.
Source code for the original. Yeah, this. I think that's right. July 21st, 1995. That's what I'm seeing. Someone correct me if
Could be
I'm
right.
wrong.
Um, and yeah, so uh, a handful of source ports came out of that, but all of them rewrote the renderer from scratch.
Mm.
And I think all of them were OpenGL accelerated. Now, the interesting problem with that is Wolfenstein 3D was programmed in such a way that what the renderer showed fed back into the gameplay logic. So like you couldn't pick up an item unless you were looking at it. Uh,
Right. Right. Okay.
and
Okay.
and so now if you change the renderer, you don't have that feedback anymore, and so that creates a whole bunch of bugs in the game. And so a lot of those early source ports were very buggy,
Mm-hmm.
even beyond weird issues. Like I know one of them there would be outlines around every single graphic, and I'm sure that was just some quirk of the drivers because early video drivers were not very stable.
Mm-hmm.
um, but and I think it was 2006 or somewhere around there. A guy named under the alias Ripper, real name is Mortis Kroll, started a project called Wolf4GW, which ported the 16-bit code base to 32-bit DOS. And then he took that project and turned it into Wolf4SDL.
Mm-hmm.
And so that got rid of the assembly code, but retained the software renderer and still worked generally the same way. The Wolf4SDL project did do enhancements, so it did get rid of the you need to look at an item in order to pick it up. And some of the renderer feedback stuff was removed, but not all of it.
Is that one of those things? Because we talked about random number generation, is that one of those things that people argue about whether or not that's a good thing, or did everyone just kind of did everyone give up on complaining about that one?
The Wolfenstein 3D community hasn't had as much choice in source ports, so I
Fair
don't think
enough.
there has been quite as much argument. With that said, with ECWolf coming into the picture and basically upending pretty much everything that community knew. So the Wolfenstein 3D community, when I showed up on the scene, was very tiny. There were basically two forums, the Die Hard Wolfers forum and Wolf 3D Haven, and both of them were basically small town mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have me showing up with this source port that implements basic things like WASD controls and making Wolfenstein 3D accessible to the masses. And I basically face vehement rejection because I am impeding on, at least my impression is, my rejection comes mainly from imposing on the small town.
Mm-hmm.
With all these people that are now coming in and asking why don't their mods work with my source port, even though, yeah. So the Wolfenstein 3D modding community was mostly based around direct hacking on the source code itself. So
Mm-hmm.
every single mod is its own source port in a way.
Oh god.
Uh,
Okay, right. So there kind of was a lot of source ports. It's just not in the same sense as what you had with Doom.
right. They weren't interchangeable. Whereas
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Doom, you can, to a certain extent, play large set of mods with any source port.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my train of thought.
Modding, small town, rejection, changing the game. You haven't got it? You lost it?
Trying to remember what the question was. Was it about choice and?
Oh, it was.
Oh,
I don't even remember exactly what the question was at this point. I think it was just kind of in general, like sort of the beginnings of ECWolf and what was going on in Wolfenstein community at the time.
and then you asked something about if there was as much debate.
Oh
About
yes,
the,
I brought up the random feature complaints. Yeah.
So the Wolfenstein 3D community does sort of still have a diehard Wolf4SDL fan base, even though the source port has been unmaintained for years. There's been a couple forks that have come off of it and all of them tried to keep the same name. So it ended up being really confusing to figure out the history of all of that because there's like 3 different projects called wolfenstein. I did convince one of them to finally rename their project to ECWolf. So that's at least solved. But yeah, none of them were blessed by the original developers, to the best of my knowledge, anyways. Because when ECWolf started, I was initially contributing back anything that wasn't like major gameplay changes. I managed to get a couple patches, I think, into the wolfenstein code base before the developer just disappeared. I was sending patches and just didn't get a response anymore. And so at that point, wolfenstein was the only maintained Wolf 3 source port, and then ECWolf took over as the only maintained one. Now there's, I think, 4. Reflection HLE, which is essentially a Chocolate Doom equivalent. And I actually have made contributions to that because, to me, the main purpose of that kind of a port is for reference purposes. So if there's some weird behavior, some of the behavior is like a memory corruption happens, and it happens in a predictable way. So certain mods can like depend on that memory corruption to work. And so what's handy about ports like Chocolate Doom and whatnot is they'll capture that behavior and make it defined behavior instead of crashing, because that's what a modern operating system would do in the same situation. Yeah, so the other one, as far as I know, one of the developers of the wolfenstein forks is still going. And as far as I know, ECWolf is still going. And then, yeah, there's ECWolf. And I think that's the 4 that are still active that I'm aware of.
Maybe this gets into like even pre-source port stuff, but why do you think there is such a big distinction with Doom and Wolfenstein here, where Doom has so much going on, but Wolfenstein even now is kind of still just a few projects here and there?
The main thing would be the assembly code. Like I said, that was a big hold up for a lot of the early projects where they just got really buggy because the way that the original code was made. The Doom source code, however, was entirely C, or I know there was assembly code in there, but I think there were C fallbacks, so you could just compile it out of the box on whatever. And so that made it much more accessible to develop for. The other thing is Wolfenstein 3D is a little bit of an acquired taste, and that it is way more primitive than Doom, and that shows. I think some people would have a better opinion of the game if they stopped after episode 3 instead of playing all 60 levels at once. Right. A lot of people don't realize that episode 4 through 6 is actually an expansion pack. And so, yeah, you end up playing through this really long game where pretty much the entire thing is the same thing over and over again. And I think that burns out people. So I think there's just less interest in the game overall. But yeah, the flip side of that is since it was a primitive game, there's a lot of things that you can do to expand.
Mhm.
And to that end, like ECWolf kind of gives more of a Rise of the Triad vibe when you actually start modding it.
Mhm.
Uh,
Where's the Triad? Why does that name ring a bell? Oh, yes. Okay, that's one.
Rise of the Triad did use the Wolfenstein 3D engine, so it far down the road, my plan is for ECWolf to have support for that. I guess I should mention ZDoom and we'll just say ZDoom was one of the early ports that actually merged all of the Doom engine games into a single engine. So that allowed mod authors to take stuff from one game into the other, and that unlocked a lot of power. A lot of the reason why the early ports didn't do the same was because a lot of the early ones used the GPL license, whereas ZDoom used the original Doom source release license originally. And so that gave us a bit more flexibility at the cost of the usual things that you expect with the GPL freedoms. Although these days, it's kind of a dubious benefit now that GZDoom has been used for probably like 30 some odd commercial games on Steam. There end up being a question like, can these games come to consoles? And the answer is no, because of the GPL. And if I could call out Valve for 1 second, they really need to release their Steamworks API under a license that is permittable through the GPL, so we can stop doing these insane workarounds.
Workarounds in what way?
So their Steamworks API is behind a NDA. However, anybody can go to the Steam partner website and sign up and then get a copy of it. So why is there an NDA there? I don't know. So that means that it's GPL incompatible because you can't introduce any further restrictions. And the way that games get around that is, one, you could have a separate process and then communicates through a socket in order to bypass the GPL requirements. Some other games just sort of take the spirit of the GPL into account. Nobody's going to complain if you just are like, hey, there's just one thing. The implementation on how to do this is very obvious, and you can get a copy of it. I just can't show you it because the NDA. And then there's also a thing, someone I think re-implemented the API as like Open Steamworks. So like you could implement it and just be like, hey, technically I'm linking against that, but actually I'm not. And then in the case of, ECWolf is the official port for the Super 3D Noah's Ark re-release on Steam and GOG. And since ECWolf is dual licensed under both the original source license and the GPL, before Ripper disappeared, Wolf for SDL was originally only nominally under the original source license. I asked Ripper if his intention was that it would be available under any license that id Software licensed it under, and he said, yeah. So then I submitted a patch to add the GPL compile option to it. And so because Wisdom Tree had a license with id Software, I'm not technically beholden to the GPL in that case, but we still follow the spirit because why not release the source code? So it's up on the ECWolf GitHub.